Hi everyone and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this LSI MegaRAID SAS9271-8i RAID controller card. Let's start off with a closer look at the retail box. First off, what might you need a RAID controller card for? Well, RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. Not random. I don't know why I kept saying random when I was doing a couple of these other cards, but that means redundant. Basically, it's going to set you up for redundancy. It can also provide a performance boost when you're combining multiple drives together, whether you're talking about mechanical hard drives or SSDs. And a RAID controller card of this caliber is typically going to be more at home in an enterprise, a server environment, for people who are actually setting up data centers. But some folks who are at home who might be looking for higher level data storage as well as protection might be interested in a RAID controller card like this, and since it's PCI-Express interface, it can easily integrate into a typical desktop computer rig. So now that we've gone over that, this is the 9271-8i. It's a 6 gigabits per second, 8-port SATA plus SAS ROC RAID controller. Now, I'll give you guys a bit more of an explanation of what that is, but I'm going to do so by starting off on this side. So first off, this card out of the box can support up to 8 serial ATA devices. That's by way of the included fan-out cables. It actually has 2 mini SAS ports, and you can also purchase add-ons. So there's lots of add-ons and upgrades to this card you can get to improve its functionality or expand the amount of devices you can connect. But again, out of the box, you get 2 fan-out cables. You can plug in 8 SATA devices. SAS devices are also supported, of course. The fan-out and connection cables for those are sold separately, however, so bear that in mind. You get 6 gigabytes per second data transfer rate, and this does support 6 gigabits per second for SAS drives as well as SATA Revision 3 drives. Again, as mentioned, you get 2 mini SAS 4i internal connectors. It operates on an X8 PCI-Express 3.0 host interface. So PCI-Express 3.0 gives you double the bandwidth of PCI-Express Gen 2, so you get a ton of bandwidth with this with this RAID card. It also includes a 1 gigabyte 1333 megahertz DDR3 SD RAM cache. You also get support for up to 128 serial ATA or SAS devices. Again, bear in mind that is by way of additional splitters that you can purchase to add additional or connect additional drives to the card. MD2 low profile form factor, so it includes this low profile bracket you can install into a low profile system. Supports RAID levels 0, 1, 5, 6, also nested RAID levels such as 10 and 50 and 60. It operates by way of an LSI SAS2208 dual-core RAID on chip. So this is an actual independent chip that handles the RAID processing. So another advantage you get by going with an add-on card like this, as opposed to say a software RAID or a integrated RAID solution for your motherboard, is it's actually offloading the RAID inputs and outputs and all the overhead basically onto the ROC rather than using your system's processor for that. It also supports cache vault flash cache protection, and I'm just going to give you guys a quick quote directly from LSI to explain what this is. Traditionally, data and write cache has been protected from power and server failures using lithium-ion battery backup units, which require costly and time-consuming hazardous shipping and disposal. Cache vault technology provides customers running small data centers or remote servers where support staff might not be immediately available with persistent non-volatile cache protection that is more environmentally friendly and offers a lower total cost of ownership over the life of the MegaRAID controller. So that should give you guys a good idea what that does. As mentioned, lithium-ion battery, so it also supports, of course, battery backup unit, and what that's going to do is protect you in the event of a power failure. Will help clear out the cache if there's any data waiting to be written there, and that's, again, for data center type use, just to make sure that your data is always there and always protected, especially if you have a power failure. And then, of course, you get those fan-out cables, so you can connect additional drives. Here's a quick look at the advanced RAID management UI. So that's some software that's included you can use to manage your RAID. And then lastly, on this side, we have a bit more of the same information I showed you guys on the opposite side of the box. But this is also going to show you all the RAID and fault tolerant features. I'm not going to go over all those individually, but they're all listed out right there. Also wanted to point out that this one is using ECC SD RAM. That's error correcting RAM that you would typically see more in a server environment if you're familiar with SD-RAM or DDR-RAM that's typically used in a desktop computer. And then, of course, you get that MegaRAID management suite, storage manager, command line utility, web BIOS, SNMP support. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we have operating system support, extensive support for lots of different operating systems, including Windows Server 2008, Vista, Server 2003, XP, Linux, and more. Of course, this is also going to be supported in Windows 7 and Windows 8 environments. Let's go ahead and take a look inside the box. So, taking a look inside the box, we first off have a RAID controller quick installation guide. This is a fairly expansive manual here. It's, of course, got different colors, so you can more easily determine what you're looking at. This is going to sort of walk you through the different features of the card. It will point them all out. I'm going to keep this on hand so I can point out some of the features on the card itself as I'm giving you guys a closer look, but basic installation instructions, and this should get you up and running without too much trouble. Also, a little bit of information on the hazardous substances contained in this RAID storage device. As lots of electronics have hazardous substances, you should always follow proper disposal procedures, of course. Also have a quick information here on replacing that bracket, so if you want to go into the low profile configuration, you can, of course. And then device driver notice, as LSI is continually working to improve the driver performance and compatibility with the different operating system environments that you might integrate this card into. You can always check the LSI website for updated drivers to make sure your card's operating at its full potential. There's the card itself, and then apart from that, we have a bit of cardboard here with some additional items tucked away into it. Let me just pull those out, and I think that about does it. Yes, just cardboard. Okay, so here's the low profile bracket. So again, just swap that out with the full-size PCI bracket right there, and you can set it up in a low profile server or other low profile box. Here is your mini SAS to SATA connector. So this is going to simply plug in via the mini SAS connector on the card, and then fans out into 4 serial ATA cables. Bear in mind, you can't plug in SAS drives to this. This is something I discovered quite recently because I don't work with a lot of SAS drives, but SAS drives, actually the block has a bit of plastic in the middle that prevents you from plugging standard serial ATA cables into it. You can, however, if you do get the SAS adapters for this drive, you can use a SAS connector to plug in a serial ATA drive. So it does work that way, just not the other way around. Next up, let's take a closer look at the card itself. So here is the RAID card itself, of course, the 9271-8i. I'm going to be kind of going over some of the features on the card, but from first look you can tell it's kind of a typical PCI-Express riser card that you would install right there. Now I'm going to be pointing out some of the different pinouts and whatnot on the card itself. I would definitely recommend, if you purchase this card, check the manual rather than going with my brief description right here, because the manual is going to be much more reliable. But I will be using it to at least point out what is what. So we're going to start off right up here, and I'm going to be using a pen to point at these by popular request. So first off, we have the J1A2 and J1A4 risers. These are SCS backplane management connectors, so you can use those to connect to hot swap backplanes that are very popular, especially in server configurations, so you can easily add and remove drives. Next to that, we have the J1B1 riser. That's this block of pinouts right there. J1B1 is individual PHY and drive fault indication headers, so you can connect those to LEDs that will indicate drive faults for you. You also have the J1A3 right there. That's this little plug connector. And J1A3 is a local battery backup connector, so you can connect that to the LSI BBU09 unit directly to the RAID controller. So there's actually a couple different variants of battery backup for this unit. This card you can actually lay right on top of this, and then there's other battery backup units that can exist outside of the system in a separate system or via a separate PCI riser card or PCI-Express riser card that you can install in your system right next to this. Moving on over in this direction, we have the J3A1. That's that one right there. Simply a drive activity LED header, so similar to the LED indicator that you might have on the front of a desktop computer. It tells you when the drives are in use. Can't forget the PCI-Express connector down here at the bottom. That's typical PCI-Express X8, Gen 3 compatible, of course. It's backwards compatible with Gen 2, so you could plug that into an X16 Gen 2 slot and get roughly the same amount of bandwidth, but you will get a little bit better performance if you go with a PCI-Express Gen 3 connector. We also have J4B1, that's this long plug right there. And J4B1 is a cache vault. I already kind of gave you guys an explanation of what that does, but that's where you would plug it in. You also have a speaker actually built in onto the card right there. This is very key, especially in a RAID environment. I'm sorry, in a server environment. If you do have a really critical failure, this is actually going to sound an alarm for you, and it's going to give you a much better means of narrowing down where that sound is coming from, if it's making a noise directly from the card itself. Of course, you have this big silver passive heatsink, and that's on top of the actual ROC RAID controller chip. And then back here we have another little 2-pin out right there. That's J5A2. That's simply a write pending LED header. So again, plug that in. That will tell you if there is data in the cache pending to be written to the actual RAID array that you have configured. You of course have your 2 mini SAS connectors here on the back. I like what LSI has done in this instance because there were some complaints with the RAID cards that had them facing up this way, especially if you're going in a low profile environment. It makes it a bit more difficult for cable management. Pointing out the back this way, it should give you plenty of room to fan out the cables that direction and route them to where they need to go. Alright, so now we have this cluster of pinouts down here, and I will muddle through this slowly. J6B3 is this one right there, if you can tell. J6B3. That's a global activity LED header, so again, simple is going to tell you that the drive activities on either port globally. You also have another 2-pin header right next to that, these 2 pins right there. That is J6B5. And that is a global drive fault LED indicator. Again, very important to connect that if you want to tell if there are any faults with the drives. J6B6 and J6B4 are these 2 4-pin connectors right there, right on top of each other. And these are a bit more fancy. These are for onboard serial universal asynchronous receiver transmitter connectors, or UART. And you get 2 of those stacked right on top of one another. Above that, another 2-pin header. That is J6B2, that little guy right there. J6B2 is the SBR bypass header. Lets you bypass the SBR EEPROM during boot in case the EEPROM contents are corrupt or missing. And finally, you have this little white port right there with 2 plugs on it. Now, I've already mentioned you can get some add-ons for this card, and some of the add-ons will come with an actual hardware key to enable them. So some of those are, for example, Cachecade, FastPath, Recovery, and Safe Store. You would simply plug in the little hardware header to that, and that will help you enable some of those functions. Oh, and also, I almost forgot. So I mentioned there's a couple different ways to do battery backup. There's one more port or slot here on the back. That is J3L1, by the way. That's the remote battery backup connector. So again, you can use that to connect the LSI BBU09 unit to RAID controller. And that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the LSI MegaRAID SAS9271-8i RAID controller card. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find more on our Newegg YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.